The yacht club smelled like money and desperation. Two scents that somehow complemented each other perfectly. I straightened my rented tuxedo and watched my wife Jennifer glide through the crowd like she owned the place. Maybe she thought she did. "Danny, stop fidgeting," she whispered, her smile never wavering as she waved at some tech executive across the room. "You look like you'd rather be fixing boat engines." "That's because I would be," I muttered, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. The crystal felt foreign in my calloused hands. 20 years of running coastal marine repair hadn't exactly prepared me for these society gatherings. Jennifer's laugh tinkled like wind chimes. "Just try to enjoy yourself. This is important for my career." Important for her career. Everything was important for her career these days. The tech startup she'd joined 6 months ago had transformed my wife from the small-town girl I'd married into this polished, ambitious stranger who spoke in corporate buzzwords and spent more time networking than talking to me. "Danny Morrison!" A voice boomed behind me. I turned to see Bill Patterson approaching, his weathered face split by a genuine grin. Bill owned the motorcycle repair shop downtown, and we'd been friends since high school. "What's a grease monkey like you doing in a penguin suit?" "Jennifer's company is sponsoring the silent auction," I explained, grateful for a familiar face. Apparently, I needed to make an appearance. Bill's eyes swept the room, taking in the crystal chandeliers and the oil paintings of dead rich people. "Fancy crowd. Your missus seems right at home." I followed his gaze to where Jennifer stood in animated conversation with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He leaned in close as she spoke, his hand resting casually on her lower back. "Who's the silver fox?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "That's Richard Blackwood," Bill said, his tone carrying a note of distaste. "Real estate developer from Boston. Bought up half the waterfront last month. Word is he's planning some luxury resort." I watched as Blackwood whispered something in Jennifer's ear. She threw back her head and laughed, the sound carrying across the room. Her hand touched his arm, lingering longer than necessary. "Excuse me," I said to Bill, setting down my champagne. "I should go rescue my wife from the local real estate shark." But as I approached, Blackwood's eyes met mine with an expression that made my skin crawl. Not embarrassment at being caught flirting with another man's wife, amusement. "You must be the husband," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, practiced, the handshake of a man accustomed to closing deals. "Richard Blackwood. Your wife's been telling me about your little boat repair business." Little boat repair business. The words hit like a slap. Coastal marine might not be flashy, but it kept food on our table and a roof over our heads. I'd built it from nothing after leaving the Coast Guard. Earned every customer through honest work and fair prices. "It's not little," I said, matching his grip. "We service half the commercial fleet in the harbor." "How quaint," Blackwood smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "Jennifer was just telling me about her new position at TechFlow Dynamics. Quite impressive for someone from such a modest background." The insult was subtle, but unmistakable. Jennifer's cheeks flushed, but she didn't defend me. Instead, she launched into an animated description of her latest project, some app that would revolutionize social media marketing. I stood there like a piece of furniture while they talked about venture capital and market penetration. Other guests began to notice, forming a small circle around Blackwood as he regaled them with stories of his latest acquisitions. He had that magnetic quality that money often brings, drawing people into his orbit like planets around a star. "I should get us some drinks," I said finally. But Jennifer barely acknowledged me. At the bar, I ordered 2 more champagnes and watched my wife from across the room. She was radiant tonight, her black dress hugging curves I rarely got to appreciate anymore. When had we stopped touching? When had she stopped looking at me the way she was looking at Blackwood now? Trouble in paradise? The voice belonged to Amanda Cross, Jennifer's best friend and colleague at TechFlow. Her red hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her green eyes held a calculating gleam I'd never liked. "Just getting drinks," I said, accepting the champagne flutes from the bartender. "Jennifer's really making waves at the company," Amanda continued, her tone conversational, but her eyes never leaving my face. "Richard's been very impressed with her work. They've been spending a lot of time together on the coastal development project." The way she said it made my stomach tighten. "What kind of time?" "Oh, you know. Late nights at the office, weekend strategy sessions. Richard's very hands-on with his investments." Her smile was sharp as a knife. "Jennifer's lucky to have such a dedicated mentor. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger yet, but a growing awareness that the ground beneath my feet was shifting. I should get these back to her. But when I turned around, Jennifer and Blackwood were gone. Looking for someone? Amanda's voice held barely concealed amusement. I scanned the crowd, my eyes searching for Jennifer's black dress. Finally, I spotted them near the exit, Blackwood's hand on her elbow as he guided her toward the door. They moved with the easy intimacy of people who'd done this before. "Where are they going?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Richard mentioned something about showing her the architectural plans for his new hotel," Amanda said, her tone innocent. "He has a suite at the Harbor Grand, very private, very inspirational." The champagne glasses slipped from my hands, shattering on the marble floor. The sound drew stares, but I barely noticed. Through the tall windows, I could see Blackwood helping Jennifer into a silver Porsche. "Careful," Amanda whispered, leaning close. "You're making a scene." But I was already moving, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. Behind me, I heard the murmur of voices, the rustle of gossip spreading through the room like wildfire. By tomorrow, half the town would know that Danny Morrison's wife had left the yacht club gala with Richard Blackwood. The Porsche was pulling out of the parking lot as I reached my pickup truck. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment, hands shaking as I tried to process what I'd just witnessed. 22 years of marriage. 22 years of building a life together, and she'd thrown it away for a man she'd known for what, a few weeks? My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Went to discuss business with Richard. Don't wait up." Business, right. I started the engine and pulled out into traffic, keeping the Porsche's taillights in view. The Harbor Grand was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like the longest drive of my life. My mind raced through the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. The late nights at the office. The new clothes. The way she'd started talking about expanding her horizons and reaching her potential. The Porsche pulled into the hotel's circular drive. I parked across the street and watched as Blackwood handed his keys to the valet. He said something to Jennifer that made her laugh, then placed his hand on her back again, guiding her through the revolving door. I sat in my truck for another 10 minutes, engine running, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to storm into that hotel and confront them, but what would that accomplish? A public scene? A humiliating confrontation that would leave me looking like the jealous, blue-collar husband who couldn't hold on to his ambitious wife? No. If Jennifer wanted to play games, I'd play them too. But I'd play to win. I drove home to our modest house on Elm Street, the same house we'd bought as newlyweds, when it was all we could afford. Jennifer had been talking about moving lately, finding something more appropriate for her new position. Now I understood why. In my workshop behind the house, I opened the safe where I kept important documents. Jennifer's birth certificate, our marriage license, the deed to the house, which was in both our names, her life insurance policy, the spare key to her car, and something else, something I'd forgotten about until now. 2 years ago, Jennifer had asked me to set up a tracking app on her phone after she'd been mugged downtown. "Just in case something happens," she'd said. I'd installed the software and then forgotten about it, but it would still be there, running in the background, logging her location. I opened my laptop and navigated to the tracking website. Jennifer's phone was indeed at the Harbor Grand, specifically in a suite on the 15th floor. As I watched, the little dot that represented my wife's location moved from the elevator to room 1547, Blackwood's suite. I stared at the screen for a long time, watching that motionless dot. My wife was in another man's hotel room, probably in his bed, while I sat alone in my workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could fix any engine, rebuild any transmission, but I couldn't repair my own marriage. But maybe I could do something else. Maybe I could make them both pay for what they'd done to me. I opened a new browser window and began to research Richard Blackwood. If I was going to wage war, I needed to know my enemy. The internet is a beautiful thing when you're looking to destroy someone's life. By 3 in the morning, I had a comprehensive dossier on Richard Blackwood spread across my workshop table like battle plans. Divorced twice. Both ex-wives had received substantial settlements, which suggested either he was generous or they had something on him. His real estate company, Blackwood Development, was leveraged to the hilt on several major projects. He drove a leased Porsche, lived in a rented penthouse, and had been photographed at charity events with at least 6 different women in the past year. The man was a professional predator, and my wife was just his latest conquest. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jennifer. "Working late. See you tomorrow. Working late. The little dot on my tracking app was still motionless in room 1547. I typed back, "Okay, love you." Let her think I was the oblivious husband. Let her believe she was getting away with it. The best revenge required patience, and I'd learned plenty of that during my years in the Coast Guard. I spent the next hour researching Jennifer's company, TechFlow Dynamics. Publicly traded, decent stock price, but struggling to compete with larger firms. They'd recently landed a major contract with the city to develop a tourism app, which explained why they were sponsoring tonight's yacht club gala. The coastal development project Amanda had mentioned was interesting. According to public records, Blackwood had purchased 12 waterfront properties over the past 6 months, all through shell companies. He was planning something big, and apparently Jennifer was helping him with the technology side. Or maybe she was just helping him with other things. I closed the laptop and walked to the window overlooking our backyard. The swing set I'd built when we were trying to have children still stood in the corner, weathered but sturdy. We'd stopped talking about kids after the third miscarriage. Jennifer had thrown herself into her career instead, and I'd focused on building the business. Maybe that's where we'd gone wrong. Maybe we'd forgotten how to be husband and wife, while we were busy being business partners in the enterprise of our marriage. But it was too late for regrets now. Jennifer had made her choice, and I was about to make mine. The next morning, I opened Coastal Marine at 7 sharp, same as always. My first customer was Pete Rodriguez, captain of the fishing vessel Maria Elena. His engine had been making a grinding noise, and I'd promised to take a look. "You seem distracted, Danny," Pete observed as I examined his transmission. "Everything all right at home?" "Fine," I lied, tightening a loose bolt. "Just tired. Jennifer had a work thing last night." "Ah, the fancy yacht club party. My cousin Carlos was working valet. Said there was quite a scene when some rich guy's wife left with another man." Pete's weathered face creased with sympathy. "Sorry, amigo, didn't mean to bring up painful subjects." So it was already making the rounds. In a town this size, gossip traveled faster than the morning tide. "No problem," I said, forcing a smile. "People love to talk." "That they do." Carlos also mentioned the guy drives a silver Porsche. Real flashy type, you know? The kind who thinks money makes him better than everyone else. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Engine's fixed. Should run smooth now." After Pete left, I called Bill Patterson. "Danny, my friend, you sound terrible," Bill said when he answered. "Rough night? You could say that. Listen, I need a favor. You still have connections with that private investigator you used during your divorce?" There was a pause. "What kind of trouble are you in?" "The kind that requires documentation. Can you set up a meeting? I'll make some calls. But Danny, be careful. Sometimes it's better not to know." Too late for that. The private investigator, a former police officer named Mike Sullivan, met me at a diner outside town that afternoon. He was a compact man, with gray hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to catalog everything around him. "Bill says you need surveillance work," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Cheating spouse? Among other things. I need photographs, documentation, financial records if possible. Everything legal and admissible. That's the only kind I do. My rates are $200 a day plus expenses. I'll need a retainer." I slid an envelope across the table. "There's 1,000. How long will it take?" "Depends what we find. If they're careless, could be a few days. If they're smart," he shrugged. "Smart people make mistakes too. They just take longer." I gave him Jennifer's information and what I knew about Blackwood. Sullivan took notes in a small leather notebook, his handwriting precise and economical. "One more thing," I said. "I want to know everything about Blackwood's business dealings, particularly this coastal development project he's working on with my wife's company. That'll cost extra. Financial investigations are complicated. Whatever it takes." Sullivan pocketed the envelope. "I'll be in touch. And Mr. Morrison, don't do anything stupid while I'm working. No confrontations, no dramatic gestures. Let me handle this professionally." I nodded, but I was already planning my next move. That evening, Jennifer came home at her usual time, acting perfectly normal. She kissed my cheek, asked about my day, and started preparing dinner as if she hadn't spent the previous night in another man's bed. "How was the business meeting?" I asked, watching her chop vegetables. "Productive. Richard has some interesting ideas about integrating technology with real estate development. It could be a huge opportunity for TechFlow." Richard, huh? You two seem to be getting pretty close. She glanced up sharply. It's business, Danny. I'm trying to advance my career. Of course, I just want to make sure you're being careful. Guys like that, they have reputations. What kind of reputation? The kind that involves married women and hotel rooms. The knife stopped moving. Jennifer's knuckles were white where she gripped the handle. Are you accusing me of something? Should I be? We stared at each other across the kitchen island. For a moment, I thought she might confess, might break down and tell me everything. Instead, she resumed chopping, her movements sharp and aggressive. I don't like your tone, she said. If you have something to say, say it. I'm just looking out for my wife, making sure she doesn't get taken advantage of by some smooth-talking developer with a silver Porsche. How do you know what kind of car he drives? The question hung in the air between us. I'd made a mistake, revealed too much knowledge, but maybe that was intentional. Maybe I wanted her to know I was watching. Lucky guess, I said. Guys like that always drive Porsches. Jennifer resumed cooking, but the easy domesticity was gone. We ate dinner in tense silence, making small talk about the weather and local news. She went to bed early, claiming fatigue from her busy day. I waited until I heard her breathing deepen, then crept to my workshop. The tracking app showed her phone was indeed in our bedroom, but that didn't mean much. She could have a second phone, a burner she used for communicating with Blackwood. I opened my laptop and began researching divorce law in Massachusetts. Community property, asset division, alimony calculations. If Jennifer wanted out of our marriage, she'd have to pay for the privilege. But first, I needed proof, and I needed a plan that would leave both her and Blackwood wishing they'd never met. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Sullivan, meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m., same place. I have something interesting. I smiled in the darkness of my workshop. The game was just beginning. Sullivan was already waiting when I arrived at the diner, a manila folder beside his coffee cup. His expression was grim. That was fast, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. Like I said, smart people make mistakes. Your wife and Blackwood aren't as careful as they think. He opened the folder and spread several photographs across the table. These were taken yesterday afternoon. The first photo showed Jennifer and Blackwood entering the Harbor Grand together. The second captured them in an intimate embrace in the hotel elevator. The third, taken through the suite's window with a telephoto lens, left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. There are more, Sullivan said quietly, but you get the idea. I stared at the images, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. Seeing the evidence was different from knowing it existed. These photographs transformed my suspicions into undeniable reality. How long? I asked. Based on hotel records. They've been meeting regularly for 6 weeks. Always the same suite. Always charged to Blackwood's company account. Sullivan pulled out another set of documents. But that's not the interesting part. He spread financial records across the table. Bank statements, wire transfers, corporate filings. Blackwood's in trouble, Sullivan continued. His development company is hemorrhaging money. 3 major projects have stalled due to permit issues and environmental concerns. He's been using investor funds to maintain his lifestyle while the business collapses around him. I studied the numbers. Even with my limited financial background, I could see the pattern. Money flowing out faster than it came in. Creditors circling. Assets being quietly liquidated. So he's broke? Worse than broke. He's been running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme, using new investor money to pay returns to earlier investors. The whole thing's about to collapse. Sullivan leaned forward. But here's where it gets interesting for you. Your wife's company has been helping him. He showed me more documents. TechFlow Dynamics had received several large payments from Blackwood Development over the past 2 months, ostensibly for consulting services on the coastal development project. What kind of consulting? I asked. That's what I'm still investigating. But I found something else. Sullivan pulled out a printed email. This was sent from your wife's work account to Blackwood 3 days ago. I read the message twice before its implications sank in. Jennifer was providing Blackwood with inside information about the city's tourism development plans, including details about zoning changes and permit approvals that hadn't been made public yet. She's helping him manipulate the real estate market, I said. That's my assessment. Blackwood's been buying properties based on advanced knowledge of which areas will be rezoned for commercial development. It's not technically insider trading, but it's definitely unethical, possibly illegal. I leaned back in the booth, processing this new information. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was actively participating in what amounted to municipal corruption. There's one more thing, Sullivan said. I traced some of the money flows. Blackwood's been making regular payments to an account in your wife's name. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger reporting requirements, but it adds up. He showed me bank statements for an account I'd never seen before. Jennifer had been receiving payments of $2,000 or $3,000 every few weeks, always from different Blackwood shell companies. She's being paid for the information, I said. That's how it looks. Your wife's not just having an affair, Mr. Morrison. She's a co-conspirator in a financial fraud scheme. I gathered the photographs and documents, my hands steady despite the rage building inside me. Jennifer had betrayed me in every possible way. Our marriage, our shared values, our future together. She'd thrown it all away for money and the attention of a smooth-talking criminal. What do you want me to do next? Sullivan asked. Keep investigating. I want to know everything about both of them. Every financial transaction, every meeting, every lie they've told. I met his eyes. And I want to know when this whole scheme is going to collapse. Based on what I've seen, Blackwood has maybe 6 weeks before his creditors start demanding answers. When that happens, everyone connected to him is going to face scrutiny, including Jennifer. Especially Jennifer. The FBI takes municipal corruption seriously, even in small towns. I paid Sullivan's fee and drove back to Coastal Marine, my mind racing with possibilities. Jennifer and Blackwood had handed me the perfect weapon for revenge. I just needed to figure out how to use it. That evening, Jennifer worked late again. According to my tracking app, she was at the Harbor Grand, probably celebrating another successful day of betraying her husband and her community. I used the time to make copies of all the evidence Sullivan had provided, storing them in multiple locations. Then I began researching the key players in the city's development office, looking for someone who might be interested in knowing about Blackwood's scheme. I found my target in Thomas Bradley, the city's planning director. Bradley had been fighting against overdevelopment of the waterfront for years, arguing that it would destroy the town's character and environment. He'd be very interested to learn that someone was manipulating the system for personal gain. But I didn't want to expose Blackwood and Jennifer yet. I wanted them to dig their hole deeper first. The bigger the scheme became, the harder they'd fall when it collapsed. Jennifer came home after midnight, claiming she'd been working on a presentation for potential investors. She was excited, talking about the opportunities ahead, the possibility of expanding TechFlow's client base beyond the local market. Richard thinks we could take this statewide, she said, her eyes bright with ambition. Imagine, Danny, we could finally have the life we've always wanted. The life we've always wanted. I'd thought we already had that. A modest house, a successful business, friends and community ties that went back generations. But apparently, that wasn't enough for Jennifer. She wanted more, and she was willing to destroy everything we'd built to get it. That sounds great, I said. Just be careful you don't get in over your head. What do you mean? Guys like Blackwood, they're used to taking risks. Sometimes those risks don't pay off. She studied my face, looking for hidden meaning in my words. Richard knows what he's doing. He's been successful for years. Has he? Or does he just look successful? Danny, what's gotten into you lately? You've been making these cryptic comments about Richard, questioning my judgment. If you have concerns, just say so directly. I almost did. I almost pulled out Sullivan's photographs and threw them on the kitchen table, demanding explanations and apologies. But that would end the game too quickly. I wanted Jennifer and Blackwood to suffer the way I was suffering. I wanted them to experience the same sense of betrayal and humiliation they'd inflicted on me. I just love you, I said instead. I want to make sure you're protected. Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. For a moment, I thought she might confess everything. Instead, she kissed my forehead and went upstairs to bed. I sat in my workshop until dawn, planning my next move. Jennifer and Blackwood thought they were so clever, so sophisticated in their deception. They had no idea they were about to become players in a much larger game, a game where I held all the cards. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of watching my wife lie to my face every day while she helped her lover steal from our community. 3 weeks of Sullivan's regular reports documenting their crimes in meticulous detail. Blackwood's scheme was accelerating. He'd purchased 18 waterfront properties now, each purchase timed perfectly with inside information from Jennifer about upcoming zoning changes. The payments to her secret account had increased accordingly. She was now receiving $5,000 per transaction. My wife had become a professional criminal, and she was getting better at it. But Blackwood's financial situation was deteriorating rapidly. Two major creditors had filed liens against his company, and the state attorney general's office had opened a preliminary investigation into his business practices. He was running out of time and getting desperate, which made him dangerous. He's been making inquiries about liquidating assets quickly, Sullivan reported during our weekly meeting. Cash transactions, offshore accounts, the kind of thing people do when they're planning to disappear. What about Jennifer? Still meeting him regularly, still providing information. But I think she's starting to suspect something's wrong. Yesterday, she spent 2 hours at the public library, researching Blackwood Development's corporate filings. So Jennifer was finally doing her due diligence. A little late, but better than never. I wondered what she'd found, and whether it would be enough to make her reconsider her choices. There's something else, Sullivan continued. Blackwood's been asking questions about you, specifically about your military background and your business relationships in town. That got my attention. What kind of questions? Whether you have political connections, law enforcement contacts, that sort of thing. He's worried about you, Mr. Morrison. Thinks you might be a threat. Good, he should be worried. That evening, I decided to test Jennifer's loyalty. Over dinner, I mentioned that I'd heard rumors about problems with some of the waterfront development projects. Really, she said, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. What kind of problems? Financial irregularities. Someone at the marina mentioned that one of the developers might be in trouble with investors. Jennifer's face remained carefully neutral, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Which developer? I didn't catch the name. Some guy from Boston, I think. Drives a fancy car, throws money around. I shrugged casually. You know how people talk. Yes, she said quietly. They do. After dinner, Jennifer excused herself to make some phone calls. I listened from the hallway as she spoke in urgent whispers, warning someone about the rumors circulating in town. Warning Blackwood. The next morning, I called Thomas Bradley at the city planning office. Mr. Bradley, this is Danny Morrison from Coastal Marine Repair. I have some information you might find interesting about the waterfront development projects. We met that afternoon at his office in City Hall. Bradley was a thin, intense man in his 50s, who'd spent his career fighting against what he called the commercialization of our coastal heritage. What can I do for you, Mr. Morrison? I pulled out a carefully selected portion of Sullivan's evidence. Financial records showing suspicious property purchases, email communications between TechFlow and Blackwood Development, bank statements documenting the flow of money between various shell companies. Someone's been manipulating the development process, I said, using inside information to buy properties before zoning changes are announced. Bradley studied the documents, his expression growing darker with each page. Where did you get this? I'd rather not say, but I can verify that it's accurate. This is exactly what I've been afraid of, the corruption of the planning process by outside interests. He looked up at me. Mr. Morrison, are you aware that this could constitute criminal activity? I suspected as much. That's why I brought it to you. I'll need to turn this over to the state attorney general's office. They'll want to interview you. I understand, but I'd appreciate it if you could keep my name out of it for now. I'm still gathering additional evidence. Bradley nodded. I'll do what I can. But once this investigation begins, it's going to move quickly. Anyone involved in this scheme is going to face serious consequences. Good, I said. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. I left City Hall feeling satisfied. The wheels of justice were now in motion, but it would take time for the investigation to reach Jennifer and Blackwood. Time I could use to implement the more personal aspects of my revenge. That evening, I put the next phase of my plan into action. I'd been monitoring Jennifer's email account for weeks, thanks to a password she'd foolishly shared with me years ago and never changed. Most of her communications with Blackwood went through encrypted messaging apps now, but she still used email for routine business correspondence, including her correspondence with Amanda Cross. Amanda had been feeding Jennifer information about office politics and company strategy, helping her navigate the competitive environment at TechFlow. But Amanda had her own ambitions, and I suspected she wouldn't appreciate learning about Jennifer's secret financial arrangement with Blackwood. I crafted a careful email, using a fake account and routing it through several proxy servers to hide my identity. The message, addressed to Amanda, contained copies of Jennifer's bank statements showing the payments from Blackwood's shell companies. The subject line read, "Thought you should know what your friend Jennifer has been up to." I sent the email at 3 a.m., then deleted all traces of its creation from my computer. The next morning, Jennifer received an urgent call from Amanda, requesting an immediate meeting. I watched through the workshop window as Jennifer paced in our backyard, her voice rising with each passing minute. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Those documents are fake. No, I never." "Amanda, you have to believe me." But Amanda had clearly made up her mind. The call ended with Jennifer staring at her phone in shock. Within an hour, she was on her way to meet Blackwood at their usual hotel. According to my tracking app, the meeting lasted 3 hours. I could only imagine the panic and recriminations taking place in that suite. When Jennifer came home that evening, she looked haggard and frightened. The confident, ambitious woman who'd been floating through our house for months had been replaced by someone who jumped at every unexpected sound. "Everything all right?" I asked, looking up from my newspaper. "Fine," she said quickly. "Just a stressful day at work. Anything I can help with?" "No, it's complicated business stuff. Nothing you'd be interested in." Nothing I'd be interested in. Even now, even when her world was collapsing around her, Jennifer couldn't resist condescending to her blue-collar husband. "Well, if you change your mind, I'm here," I said. "We're married, remember? We're supposed to support each other." She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something like recognition flicker in her eyes, as if she was finally remembering what she'd thrown away for money and excitement. "Danny," she said softly, "if something happened, if I made some mistakes, would you forgive me?" It was the closest she'd come to a confession. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her we could work through whatever problems she'd created. But that part was small, and getting smaller every day. "Depends on the mistakes," I said. "Some things can be forgiven, others can't." She nodded slowly and went upstairs without another word. I returned to my newspaper, but I wasn't reading. I was thinking about the final phase of my plan, the move that would destroy both Jennifer and Blackwood completely. It was time to end this game.